The bridge of the Athelian star destroyer Judgment of the Void was a study in ancient polished metal and quiet, self-important efficiency. Admiral Kor, whose species was known for their height and cool obsidian-like skin, stood before a vast holographic projection. It showed the third planet of this newly discovered star system, Earth, a swirling marble of blue and white that seemed small, vulnerable, and utterly unaware of the power currently pointed at its throat. For generations, the Athelian star empire had known only compliance. Their vast, galaxy-spanning rule was maintained not by continuous fighting, but by a simple promise of destruction. No species had dared refuse their first ultimatum in 500 years. These new primitives, these humans, were barely spacefaring. They were a necessary minor step in the Empire's slow, stately expansion. "Send the message, Sub-Commander," Admiral Kor commanded, his voice a low, resonant drone that brooked no argument. "Standard threat level 4. Demand immediate cessation of all space travel, surrender of all mineral resources, and payment of tribute, or face systemic sterilization of all major continental population centers. Give them 1 standard hour to reply." The message, delivered through a powerful ancient translation matrix, was immediately beamed down to every major global network on the planet below. Kor leaned back in his command chair, expecting the usual frantic, tearful plea for mercy and a quick surrender. The whole process should be finished before his next ceremonial meal. Meanwhile, thousands of miles below, in a small, windowless office near the United Nations headquarters, Kevin was staring at a screen that had suddenly gone red. Kevin was a mid-level diplomat, specializing in conflict de-escalation, a field that had been blissfully boring for the last few decades. The screen was displaying the Athelian ultimatum, translated into stark, simple English. Demand: unconditional surrender. Compliance is mandatory. Resistance is futile. Kevin laughed. It was not a loud, heroic laugh, but a short, surprised bark of disbelief. He quickly covered his mouth, looking around the small room. A dozen other analysts were frozen, their faces pale, staring at their own terminals. But then one of them, an older woman named Jane, giggled nervously. The sound broke the tension. Soon the room was filled with quiet, strange sounds, nervous chuckles, head-shaking snorts, and one person loudly announcing, "Did they just say tribute?" Kevin rubbed his temples. This wasn't panic. This was the collective human defense mechanism of finding the profound absurdity in the face of insurmountable danger. They were being threatened with extinction by a giant, blue-skinned alien, and their first reaction was to check if it was a bad practical joke. In another part of the world, deep inside a hardened UEDF naval base, Megan was strapping herself into the cockpit of her high-acceleration kinetic fighter, callsign WASP-03. The cockpit was a tight, functional space, smelling faintly of ozone and recycled air. She was running diagnostics when the ultimatum broadcast took over her helmet display. She listened to the alien voice, so slow and pompous, reciting the list of demands. She had spent her life pushing her body and her machine past limits that would kill a normal person. She lived for the brief, terrifying moments of maximum stress where one wrong twitch of the joystick meant structural failure or a blackout. She looked at the gravity compensators in her console. They were rated for far more than any pilot, or any alien, she suspected, was willing to endure. Surrender? The word felt cheap, lazy. Megan flexed her gloved fingers on the controls, feeling the perfect alignment of her high-velocity railgun. She felt a surge of pure, joyful anticipation. This wasn't a threat. It was the ultimate challenge. Back at the UN office, the initial wave of strange amusement had passed. Now the diplomats had to respond. The planet, in a chaotic global debate, had already made up its mind. Kevin found himself staring at the cursor, tasked with communicating Earth's collective gut feeling to the most powerful empire in the galaxy. He tossed the diplomatic protocol aside. the Athelian message had been 1,000 words of threat and self-aggrandizement, Kevin's reply was 2 sentences. He typed them, checked them once for clarity, and hit send. The massive, highly polished bridge of the Judgment of the Void was silent. Admiral Kor looked at the single, simple text reply projected on his screen. Message received. We accept the war. Please proceed. Admiral Kor's 3 eyes blinked in slow, staggered confusion. It took several long, ticking seconds for the translation to register in his ancient mind. He stood up, his ornate uniform suddenly feeling stiff and too heavy. These primitives had not begged. They had not wept. They had replied to a declaration of systemic genocide with casual, almost bored acceptance. A low, dangerous hiss escaped the Admiral's throat. They welcomed it? He whispered to the silence of the bridge. Dispatch the first punitive fleet. Immediate launch. Target designated Ceres. Teach them the meaning of fear. The war had begun, and the Empire had already fundamentally misunderstood its new enemy.
Admiral Kor watched the display from the bridge of his massive star destroyer. Below him, the punitive fleet, led by the heavy cruiser Iron Hand, slipped into the deep black of space. The ships were not the largest in the Empire, but they were more than enough for a planet like Earth. They were built on the idea that they were simply better. They moved with slow, steady power, protected by layered shields that could stop any weapon these primitives might have. Target is the human asteroid mining center near Ceres, Kor told his subcommander. Execute a full planetary lockdown. Disable the orbital defenses. Show them that their refusal was a very expensive mistake. The commander of the Iron Hand, Captain Rill, was just as confident. He had fought only 2 minor engagements in his long career, both ending in the enemy's swift surrender. His fleet moved in a perfect geometric formation. Their energy weapons, capable of boiling oceans, were charged and ready. He waited for the local human forces to scatter in fear. Miles away, hidden near the shadows of a large asteroid, Megan breathed out slowly. The tight, high-G suit molded itself to her body, a second skin that helped keep her conscious. She looked at her squadron's status board. Wasp drones, all 12 of them, were ready. Their ships were small, almost crude next to the massive Imperial vessels. They looked like oversized, angular darts. But they were fast. Insanely fast. All Wasps, listen up. Megan's voice was clear, if a little tight, over the comms. They are big, they are slow, and they think their shields can stop us. Remember your training. We don't hit the shields, we hit the ship. Megan gripped the controls. Her ship didn't have heavy plasma cannons or massive energy beams. It had a railgun, a simple old weapon that used magnets to throw metal slugs at incredible speed. The slugs didn't burn or explode. They just hit. Hard. At high speeds, a simple metal slug carried the power of a small bomb. Go to max acceleration on my mark, she ordered. Mark. The moment Megan pulled the trigger on her speed, everything outside her cockpit turned into a blur. The gravity compensators screamed in protest, fighting the brutal forces trying to flatten her against the seat. Even with the advanced suit, her vision tunneled for a moment. Her heart hammered in her chest. This was what she lived for, the edge of human endurance. To Captain Rill on the Iron Hand, the attack was not an attack at all. It was a flicker on the edge of his sensors. He saw 12 small signatures appear and then vanish as they accelerated past any speed he thought possible. Captain, enemy contacts are moving at speed 9.4, impossible velocity, cried his sensor operator. Nonsense, Rill shouted. Their ships must be tearing themselves apart. Prepare to fire a wide-area energy sweep. But before the wide sweep could charge, the humans were on them. Megan was flying her ship in a series of violent, unpredictable maneuvers. She was not flying a straight line. She was flying a drunken, impossible dance, constantly changing direction to avoid the slow, predictable targeting grids of the Athelian ships. The Athelian energy fire was terrifying, massive beams of brilliant light that would vaporize anything they touched. But the beams were always where Megan had been, not where she was. She was already half a mile away, pulling a turn so hard that the metal of her ship groaned. "Wasp 03, taking fire," a voice crackled in her ear. "Shields are holding, but they're too slow." "Ignore the shields," Megan yelled back. "Target the heat sinks and comms arrays. Make them blind." She pushed her ship into a 90-degree lateral turn that slammed the blood in her body to one side. The pain was sharp, but she grit her teeth and focused. She was not aiming for the main body of the Iron Hand, which was protected by the layered shields. She knew the shields had weak points where they had to vent heat or allow communication signals through. Megan armed her railgun. She came in low, hugging the hull of the cruiser, moving too fast for the ship's point defense weapons to track. She found a spot near the rear of the bridge tower, a cluster of glowing energy vents. "Now or never," she muttered. She fired 4 slugs. The railgun made a deep, satisfying thump inside the cockpit. To Captain Rill, on the Iron Hand, the attack was a sudden, violent shudder. His shields barely flickered. They were designed to absorb energy, but the simple, high-speed metal slugs, moving close to the speed of light, hit the unshielded venting area. The energy of the impact was so great and so focused that it simply punched through the hull, bypassing the protection entirely. Inside the Iron Hand's bridge tower, lights flashed red. A terrible, tearing noise echoed through the deck as the bridge collapsed inward, cut off from the rest of the ship. Silence fell on the rest of the Athelian fleet. The Iron Hand was dead, dark, and spinning slowly in space. The small human ships, the Wasps, zipped around the crippled cruiser one more time, ensuring the damage was done. "Wasp leader to all units," Megan said, her voice strained but victorious. "First contact successful. Athelian fleet is scattering. We hold the line." Back on the Judgment of the Void, Admiral Kor was standing again, his fists clenched so hard his knuckles turned white. His vast, ancient ship was miles away, but he felt the shame of the loss instantly. They bypassed the energy defenses, he stammered. "But the kinetic barrier, it was not active." "Admiral," the sensor operator reported nervously, "the enemy vessels were too fast. They never gave us time to raise the full defensive layers. They hit and fled before we could properly lock targets." Kor looked at the wreckage of the Iron Hand on his display. His fear-based strategy had failed. These humans were not following the rules. They did not fight like soldiers. They fought like pests, like a cloud of angry, chaotic wasps. And they had won the first round. The Empire would have to change its plans.
Admiral Kor was a patient being, but his patience was gone. The failure of the Iron Hand was a stain on the Athelian Star Empire. He had called in a fleet 10 times larger than the first. These ships were not just for fighting, they were for waiting. They took up positions around Earth, forming a massive, silent wall. This was the blockade. "They will starve without their off-world supplies," Kor stated to his commanders. "They will feel the cold touch of true power. They will understand that their small victory was nothing." But starvation took time, and Kor wanted quick results. He decided on a new plan, the Siege of Fear. They would not bomb cities to dust, which was messy and wasteful. They would bomb hope. The targets were power stations, large communication towers, and major water treatment centers, things that made life easy. The strikes would be precise, quick, and designed to cause maximum chaos and minimal loss of life. The goal was to make the humans fight each other in a panic, not fight the Empire. The first strike hit a massive power hub outside a major city. The lights went out for millions of people. The Empire waited for the cries of fear, for the riots, for the begging. In a secure, deep underground bunker below the city, Alex was watching the power grid map turn black. Alex was a brilliant network engineer, usually focused on making sure everyone had fast internet. Now, he was fighting a war with cables and code. "They're trying to break us from the inside," Alex said to his small team. He pointed to the data feeds. "See? They stopped the strike right when they knew it would cause a blackout, but before it hit the core reactor. It's all psychological." Alex's team, made up of programmers, engineers, and even a former video game designer named Sam, had anticipated this move. They knew the Empire, with its long history of easy wins, would be predictable in its arrogance. The Empire expected panic. The humans offered something else. "Sam, push the feed of the repair crews out to the WorldNet now," Alex ordered. "Don't hide the damage. Show them the dust, show them the fire, but mostly, show them the workers laughing while they fix it." The Empire had shut down major communication satellites, but Alex's team had built a distributed network using thousands of old cell towers and high-altitude balloons. The internet, slow and chunky, still worked. The moment an orbital strike hit a major transport bridge, knocking a huge section into the river, the fear should have spiked. But as Alex tracked the global response, something unexpected happened. Instead of chaos, the network filled with defiance. People started posting short videos. A video went viral showing a human construction worker standing on the broken bridge section, shaking his fist at the sky and then giving a thumbs up. Another showed hundreds of ordinary citizens with shovels and tools arriving at the damaged power plant to help the engineers. The Imperial strike meant to show human weakness. Instead, it became a strange sort of public holiday, a call to action. Civilian factories switched from making toys and cars to making simple tools and spare parts, ramped up production. Recruitment centers for the UDF saw lines stretching for blocks. The Athelian sensors were picking up confusing data. Admiral Kor looked at the readings of Earth's population morale. "Explain this, Subcommander," Kor hissed, his voice tight with confusion. "Our targeted strike on the Rio Communications relay caused a 20% drop in despair levels and a 40% spike in cooperation index. How can they be less afraid after we strike them?" The subcommander shifted nervously on his metallic feet. "Admiral, the data is clear. They are not responding to fear as we expected. They are sharing images of the damage, but they are adding a form of commentary. They seem to view our destruction as evidence of their own importance. They call it proof that the enemy is trying hard." Kor stared at the projection of Earth. He saw the cold metallic ships of his grand blockade, and he saw the small, defiant blue marble below. The humans were not starving quickly enough. They were not panicking. They were finding a strange, shared joy in the struggle. His campaign of fear had completely failed, and the humans were more united than ever. They were not begging for peace. They were waiting for the Empire to make a move that would let them fight back even harder.
Admiral Kor was losing control. The humans had laughed at his ultimatum, dodged his fleet, and treated his campaign of fear like a slight inconvenience. He could not destroy the planet without wasting too much time and resources. He needed a quick, decisive victory that broke the human spirit. He looked at the reports. The humans had several small, heavily protected orbital stations near the planet, essential for defense coordination. Kor decided to take one.
It was a risky move, but he felt his massive armored boarding troops, the Iron Guard, could handle any human soldier. They were twice the size of a human, encased in thick ceremonial armor, and trained only for frontal assaults. The target was a compact, ugly defense hub called Beacon Station 7. Dozens of alien drop pods, shaped like black metal teardrops, launched from the massive Athelian flagship. They hit the station's outer hull with loud, shaking impacts. The Iron Guard, huge blue-skinned soldiers in dark armor, cut their way into the station's main maintenance corridor. Inside the station, Lisa crouched low behind a stack of damaged air filters. She was the station's security commander, a small woman but hard as polished steel. She wore light, flexible battle armor that let her move quickly. Next to her, Joe and Ben, two other human soldiers, checked their weapons, short-barreled rifles designed for tight spaces. "They are using the central maintenance channel," Lisa whispered into her helmet mic. "The maps they stole from that old probe will tell them this is the quickest route. They won't expect quick turns." The Empire troops expected wide, straight corridors like those on their own grand ships. What they found were narrow, twisting tunnels choked with pipes and emergency equipment. This was a human station, built to be fixed quickly, not admired. The first group of Iron Guard marched forward, their heavy boots thudding against the metal floor. They were slow, arrogant, and moved in a straight line. The humans let them pass the first junction. "Now," Lisa ordered. Joe hit a hidden switch. Wires that had been laid across the floor moments before tightened. The lead alien soldier, unable to see the thin wires through his narrow visor, tripped. His heavy armor was meant to protect him, but now it only made him fall heavily, blocking the way for the three soldiers behind him. Before they could untangle themselves, a small, sticky charge, a simple human invention, flew from the darkness and attached itself to the rear soldier's heavy boot. It exploded not with a bang, but a sharp, localized flash, melting the floor around the soldier's feet and locking him instantly into the metal deck. The Athelian commander, a massive soldier named Vor, roared in confusion. "Advance! Ignore the traps! Clear the path!" But the path was not clear. Lisa and her team were not fighting to kill, they were fighting to break the rhythm. The human soldiers used the small side vents and hatches like doorways. They would pop up, fire a quick burst of kinetic slugs into the aliens' armor joints, the places where the plates met, and then vanish before the heavy alien weapons could turn around. Vor and his soldiers were used to a battle where they were the biggest, fastest thing on the field. Here they were clumsy giants trapped in a child's playground. Their expensive energy weapons were too powerful for the small corridors. A full blast would destroy the station, killing them too. They were forced to use slower, less effective pulse guns. Lisa knew they could not hold the corridor forever. She had to get to Vor. She used a maintenance shaft to quickly move ahead, crawling through a pipe filled with warm water. She emerged in the control junction just as Vor, frustrated and angry, rounded the corner. Vor saw her, a small, dirt-covered human holding a simple metal baton that glowed faintly. He laughed, a harsh, dry sound. He raised his massive rifle to fire. Lisa didn't hesitate. She didn't try to shoot. She was too close. She leapt, using the wall for a quick boost. She dodged under his huge weapon arm and slammed the electrified baton straight into the exposed wiring where his shoulder armor met his chest plate. The shock was immediate and devastating. Vor's complicated armor systems shorted out, showering sparks everywhere. He gave a high, painful shriek as his battlesuit became a giant metal cage of pain. He dropped his rifle and crashed to his knees. Lisa pulled back, breathing hard. She looked down at the defeated alien commander. His helmet was cracked, and his dark eyes stared out in horror. He had been taught that humans were weak. He now knew they were not. They were vicious, smart, and willing to fight dirty in a way the Empire had forgotten.
The rest of the Iron Guard, seeing their leader fall in such a messy, undignified way, lost their will to fight. They began to retreat, pulling their stunned commander back toward the drop pods. The Empire had failed again. The boarding action was a total disaster.
Admiral Kor was beyond angry. His pale blue skin was tight with fury, and his face, usually a cold, smooth mask, was twitching with frustration. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Judgment of the Void. The humans had failed to panic. Their small ships were annoying, like stinging insects, and their soldiers were like rats in the walls. The siege of fear had only made them stronger and more united. "Prepare the final solution," Kor commanded, his voice deadly quiet. "Full, focused bombardment, not to destroy the planet, but to sterilize the Sirtis defense hubs. If they will not yield to fear, they will yield to fire." His commanders looked uneasy. This was more extreme than any mission they had ever taken part in. But firing on the surface was the last, most powerful threat they had. The huge ships of the blockade moved into a massive, clear-firing formation, ready to unleash a wave of pure power. Deep below the surface of Earth, in the command bunker, Kevin watched the data streams turn red. The Imperial fleet was moving into its final killer formation. This was the moment they had prepared for. This was the line they had to hold. "They're going for the overkill, exactly as we planned," Kevin said calmly. He pointed to the data screen that showed the position of every alien ship. He tapped a finger on the massive dreadnought positioned next to Kor's ship, the Judgment of the Void. Kevin turned to the comm screen where Megan's face appeared, tense but focused. She was already in her Wasp fighter, ready to launch. "Megan, you and the Wasps have the final run. You know the target. The Iron Fist's primary weapon control is a huge, unshielded hub for the power transfer. They leave it open because nothing is supposed to get that close to their biggest ship." Megan nodded, a grim determination in her eyes. "It's a run straight through the biggest cloud of fire in the galaxy, Kevin. Their point defense cannons will be at full power." "They will be focused on hitting 1,000 small targets," corrected her. "You only need to land one single modified slug, Megan. One slug fired into that hub. It won't destroy the ship. It will just override the safety and retargeting protocols." The plan was a single, perfect gamble. It required the fastest human pilots to fly directly into the defensive cone of the biggest alien warship, hit a target the size of a shipping container, and escape. If they failed, Earth would take the full force of the orbital attack. Megan took a deep, steadying breath. "Tell the planet we held the line, sir." The Wasp squadron launched. They were no longer just 12 ships. The fleet had spent the blockade building 24 more. 36 tiny, brutal ships streaked into the void. Admiral Kor watched the display. "The insects are returning. Target them with all point defense batteries. Do not let one of them get close to the dreadnoughts." The space above Earth became a chaotic storm of energy fire and metal slugs. The alien point defense grid was a wall of light, but the Wasp pilots had trained for this impossible flight. They flew in tight, impossible formations, weaving and twisting so fast that the alien targeting computers couldn't decide which ship to shoot first. Megan was the lead. She pushed her ship to its absolute limit. Warning lights screamed red in her cockpit. Her ship shook violently from near misses, but she held steady. Her target, the huge, blue, pulsing energy hub on the side of the Iron Fist dreadnought, was rushing toward her. She closed the distance rapidly until she was only a few yards above the dreadnought's hull. "Clear the way! Wasp 01 is on target," she yelled. 2 other Wasps peeled off, drawing the last bit of close-range fire away from Megan. She had a clean shot. She fired her railgun. The single, simple metal slug hit a massive blue hub with a barely visible flash.
The slug did not explode. It went straight through the power cables, carrying a tiny, human-made computer virus in its tip. On the bridge of the Iron Fist, the alien crew saw the horrifying error. The main weapon, which was fully charged and pointed at Earth, suddenly showed a new target. A target that was only a short distance away. The Imperial flagship, the Judgment of the Void. "Halt! Shut down the cannon! Emergency override!" the Iron Fist captain screamed. But the human virus was already at work. The computer was locked in a simple repeating loop. Fire at target, Judgment of the Void. Admiral Kor, on his flagship, saw the dreadnought beside him. He saw its massive cannon begin to glow with a terrible, blinding light. He realized what the humans had done. They had not come to fight him. They had come to steal his biggest gun and turn it on him. "Evasive maneuvers! Evade! All power to shields!" Kor yelled. But it was too late. His flagship was too big, too slow, and too close. The Iron Fist fired its primary weapon. The colossal beam of pure, focused energy, a weapon meant to pierce planetary crusts, only traveled a short distance. It hit the Judgment of the Void right in the command spine. The flagship exploded. It was a sudden, huge, silent eruption of light that instantly vaporized the center of the ship. The rest of the Athelian fleet, seeing their admiral and their command ship vanish in a single, impossible flash, lost all will to fight. The fleet, which had always moved as one, began to scatter, each captain trying only to save their own ship. The blockade was broken. The powerful Galactic Empire had been defeated in its first war by a small blue planet that refused to stop fighting. Deep underground, Kevin lowered his head. He was silent for a long moment, watching the alien fleet break and flee. Then he looked at the cheering faces around him. "Tell them to send the repair crews out," he said, a simple, tired smile on his face. "We have a lot of wreckage to clean up."